Okay, hello, everybody. Well, thanks for finding the room. It's not that easy. I'm going to just sort of get ready here. My name is Bob Hackett, and I'm the executive director at Travel Southern Oregon, which is the RDMO for Southern Oregon region, which is Josephine, Jackson, Douglas, Klamath, and Lake County. And so this whole project that we're about to talk about really is at that sort of outer edge of our Southern Oregon territory. And just to do a check-in, who's here from Lake County in the room? Okay, Brianna from Lakeview County Chamber. Awesome. And then anyone else from other Harney and Malheur counties? Malheur. Great. Okay, thank you for coming. It's always anxious to hope people don't hear about something for the first time, right? When we're talking about it in your hometown. So, my fellow panelists and I would like to share more of our story exploring a dark sky place nomination in the Oregon Outback, which is that vast geography of range and mountains and lakes in southeastern Oregon. And to help us all immerse ourselves in the story of the Outback Dark Sky Network, I think the best place to start, because we like to tell stories, is naturally with Dr. Seuss. Okay, so, and we'll start with the Lorax, who speaks for the trees, as we all know. What most people don't know, and that I happen to be privy to, is that the Lorax has a brother who also speaks for things that can't speak, named Astrax. Okay? And Astrax also speaks for things who can't speak. And in a kind of reverse twist, can you hear me? Okay, unlike the Lorax and the truffula trees and the onceler and everything disappearing, Astrax actually speaks for the infinity of stars whose billion years of light still shine above us every night. And it's just that the stars are vanishing from the sight in most of the country and most of the world. And this is why we do the work. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the why. We're going to spend time on the how. But the conservation piece, I'm going to take this off later, just so you know. This is why we do the work. You can see this is the United States light map, and that circular area is really the Outback that we're talking about. And it's in the spirit of Astrax that we focused our attention on one of the last truly pristine night skies left on the continent, right here. And you can see sort of just the vast pool of pristine darkness we're speaking of. Okay, so Astrax, that's what he's for. Okay, so we'll just let him stay here. Okay, but now I'm going to go. You guys didn't get to see that, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. And now I'm going to do this with panelists that have been working on this project for a couple years now, and I'll let them introduce ourselves, and then we'll just have a conversation with ourselves, trying to illuminate a lot of the process. I think a lot of your questions will get answered if we finish up in time. We'll if there's still anything out there, we'll try and get to it. So we'll be speaking from there, not from here. And I just would love my friends and colleagues to introduce themselves down the line, and then we'll take it from there.
My name is Dawn. My name is Dawn Nielsen. I've been a dark sky advocate for over 12 years. I'm a longtime board member of Rose City Astronomers. I'm a natural resources planner. So once discovering that dark skies were disappearing, that was an issue to me as an amateur astronomer, and it was even a bigger issue to me as an ecologist.
Thanks, Tom. Sammy Castonguay. I'm the program director for a conservation advocacy organization, Friends of the Owyhee, out of Ontario, Oregon. And I'm a geologist by background, and public land has always been very important to me, and also camping out under the night sky for decades. So I'm really happy to be here with these folks today to talk to all of you about dark sky tourism and the impacts here in Oregon.
Good morning, Elena Carollo. I am the Executive Director of the Eastern Oregon Visitors Association. We are the regional destination management organization, so similar to Bob with Southern Oregon. We cover 11 counties, 2 of which are Malheur and Harney, where we're doing a lot of the work with Travel Southern Oregon today, and I'm really excited to speak with you all on, the great progress we've been making. So thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, and for those of you who are, in the tourism speak, this is a great example of a cross-regional program with Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon, which encompasses, what, 2/3 of the state? I mean, we got it, Elena, we got it. I'm going to go through some high-level stuff just to define, so everybody knows what we're talking about. And I'm going to move right into this idea of what is astrotourism. And so, just a few definitions about dark sky, and the term dark skies comes from the work of the International Dark Sky Association, which is a volunteer nonprofit group dedicated to the conservation of night skies. There are chapters in Oregon. Bill and Kathy are here with the Oregon chapter of the IDA, and they have a dark sky places program at the IDA. This is where the dark sky term comes from with that association. And Dawn's going to talk a little bit more about how that works later. But some agencies and tourism offices have found that using terms like night sky tourism or astrotourism or simply stargazing accomplishes on a visitor level the interaction with that dark sky. Sometimes people they get a little scared. Right? Some people don't like to go to dark places because they're not sure what's there. And so all those terms are interchangeable, but that term dark sky comes from the IDA, who is the certifying body of any of these things we're talking about. We go to Oregon is not by any means the first to enter this dark sky tourism space. And in fact, many states already have a robust astrotourism program with a range of dark sky places to work with. Chief among them, and this is just an example, Utah has been doing this for a long time at a high level. And they've essentially made every state park a dark sky park. They just put staff and commitment behind it, and they've done that. Other areas making astrotourism a part of their work are the Colorado Plateau in Arizona and Utah, Idaho, Nevada, and even Michigan. The Pure Michigan campaign, Michigan is all in on dark skies, and so you'll start to see it more and more. We're so pleased that Oregon is entering this space. We're doing it sort of, the Prineville Reservoir got certified. Sun River Resort was early on for that, but we're picking up momentum. And I think in the long run, the way we're doing it on the slower track is going to make it much more sustainable and lasting. Okay, but we do see in that light pollution map that was there before that we do have a super competitive advantage in this space. We just haven't really formalized how we work with that in the tourism space. It is always worth asking, and when I'm with my laptop at the Heart Mountain store or at the Paisley Community Center, why is tourism at the table? And I ask that question because that's what everybody in the room is asking. Why are you here? and why is tourism bringing this to us? And partly it's because of how we do our work, and I think most of you in the industry know what that means, bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders, sustainable collaborative partnerships. Tourism is uniquely positioned in a lot of places to work with public land managers, private landowners, nonprofits, governmental agencies, industry, businesses, and stakeholders. It's what we do. And so part of this convening of people power is just sort of part of how we do business. But there's no doubt that there's also an economic benefit to this work that we're also aware of and can contribute significantly to rural economies. By its very nature, night sky tourism involves an overnight stay, and a dinner and a breakfast and all of that stuff that goes with it. So it's not a big leap to do that. The only study that I've seen, and I'd love to see more, the Colorado Plateau Group did an economic analysis of the impact of night sky tourism in the Colorado Plateau. And you can see just some of those high level findings, looking at, $580 million a year in the plateau contribution annually. Now they have a lot of national parks, huge visitor infrastructure to accommodate that. And so $580 million a year for that kind of infrastructure this makes complete sense to me. I mean, Southern Oregon, those little 5 counties, we're $1 billion a year of visitor spending just in Southern Oregon. So that idea that $600 million a year is going to come from night sky tourism seems conservative to me, actually. actually. So it's not it's $1 billion in 2019 alone, Southern Oregon. They also found that there's a 300% increase in the spending for people engaged in night sky tourism. So that's to say, someone who's coming to Arches or going through the Grand Canyon, people who say, yes, I was here and I did night sky tourism, they actually spend 3 times as much money. And so when you get out to Harney, you get out to Malheur, you get out to Lake County, those are big impacts in those communities. And you'll find the structure that we're working with Gateway Communities is designed to harness that economic impact in businesses where it's going to make a difference. Also here in Oregon, part of the reason we do this work too is that we really do think that tourism agencies have an ongoing responsibility to maintain good community engagement, create messaging and publicity that's appropriate for communities, and develop destination assets that benefit communities rather than burden them with excess traffic and unwanted behavior. And so the slow approach has allowed us to have those engagements, and we're really pleased with those interactions to date. So as dark sky tourism grows in Oregon, and it will, whether you're from the coast or you're from Central Oregon, or you'll start to see it. You'll start to work with this. I guarantee it. It's coming, and the years-long formation of the ODSN should be able to serve as a model for regional community engagement. I know Travel Oregon's tracking that, so we can share these assets with you in a very usable way, so you can benefit from what we've been able to do. I'll also point out, I think there's a huge cultural opportunity here with the tribes. The sky is neutral, just to say no one owns those stories, and so when you open up a platform where we can talk about skies, night skies, culturally that's a wide open thing, and the engagement opportunity is huge for anyone who has the foresight and the willingness to engage in that way. So that's the high level overview of some of the terminology, and I'm just going to move it over to Elena here and just say, Elena, how do you see these astro-tourism opportunities playing out in Eastern Oregon?
No, for sure. Thanks so much, Bob. I think for our region, astrotourism really helps create aligns with our destination development work that we're doing. One of the things kind of in this process in working with Travel Southern Oregon and this designation is really enhancing partnerships with land managers, stakeholders, city and county officials. So it really helps to broaden these interactions and opportunities for destination development. I think Bob also touched on the gateway communities, the economic development impacts that it'll have on our local communities, and kind of having this collaborative engagement really helps to guide that storytelling, really getting the insight and feedback from our local partners. I think that's kind of what I'm really excited about. Just in addition to, our region is really primed for it, as I touched on earlier. When you look at the map, Eastern Oregon, 11 counties, it's about 42,000 square miles. A lot of that has dark skies. So really using this kind of as a platform, or kind of as a template on how we can do this throughout the rest of our region and the state, I think is super exciting. And just having those defining astrotourism and kind of what to expect from the visitor perspective, I think is really helpful as well.
And how does that fit in with your friends group, Sammy, that astrotourism idea? Or do you see it a different way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it fits in kind of hand in hand. So as a land conservation organization, we're looking during the daylight at the land, at the rocks, at the plants, and engaging people's hearts and minds with the landscape so they have an attachment to place. Ultimately, that's one of the things we are trying to inspire. And for the longest time, the Owyhee, which is very dark, we have used the dark sky as one of the attributes for coming to this area, for coming to the Owyhee to experience. So I think it really goes hand in hand to look above at the darkness and to marry land conservation, at least in some perspective, or the importance of rangelands with dark night sky. And then in tourism, I think that oftentimes when we're thinking of outdoor recreation, certainly in your industry, that's a tourism perspective. And I love the point that everyone's made that these are people that are staying overnight. I think that's a real key in all of this too, is the infrastructure has to exist for people to want to stay overnight, whether that's a campground or whether that's a hotel in the city with a grocery store and a nice place to eat. So that's how I see it anyway, Bob.
That's great. And so, Dawn, you've been doing a lot of this work. Can you give us a good example of where tourism has fit in with this night sky work in your experience?
Well, we're sitting here in Central Oregon, which is really the prime spot that started a while back. Central Oregon and the Bend area in particular has long been the playground of folks in the Willamette Valley. It's where folks go to get high and dry, just get a drier climate and to be able to see stars because of that higher and drier climate. And because of that, we have Pine Mountain Observatory. We have the location of the Oregon Star Party, which attracts 1,000 people every year. That's just because of the site capacity. More would likely come. It's considered one of the best star parties in the nation, and people come from other states to our star party. And then we also have right here, it used to be the Sun River, Observatory and Nature Center, and now it's the Oregon Observatory. As a success, it used to be like a nominal donation. It is now $20 to go because it has become so popular. So I've seen, tour guides now looking at stargazing. And so right here in Central Oregon is really the finest example of how dark sky tourism. But another example, and that folks might not think about, are partnerships with other properties that have dark skies. So one of the things that OMSI, and I expect you're all familiar with our Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, I'm longtime friends with Jim Todd, who's the planetarium director, and he's a member of RCA and now our president. And they've partnered with wineries in the Willamette Valley. And this has been going on for 7 years, and it's a different winery, so they're looking with the whole group, and a different winery steps forward. And they have a night of people come to the winery and people stay at night, and all the volunteers from RCA come, and they sell out. Every year they sell out. And so it's a chance for people to get, these aren't pristine skies there in the Willamette Valley, but they're darker than the places that people are coming from. And it's just this wonderful marriage of how you can have something by day and extend your reach by night. So I think those are the two keys of where to go.
And then, Dawn, so while you have the mic, it's a good time to slow you. Can you sort of give us everybody a quick overview of this IDA Dark Places program, because you were talking about different qualities of dark, and what the unique proposition of our nomination is here.
So Bob mentioned it's the International Dark Sky Association. It's a nonprofit that's has a very small staff, and it's mostly kept going through volunteer organizations. Just volunteers on the ground, and so they're chapters that are formed, they're delegates. I'm an IDA delegate. I was also co-founder of Oregon's IDA and first chair, and so this is the organization, and that is their only mission, is to protect dark skies. And they were, in 2001, formed this program for dark sky places, with this notion that it's not just to kind of recognize where places are dark, because not all dark sky places are actually dark, but it's really to get this kind of community outreach and awareness of the importance of protecting dark skies. And I'll say, IDA, when it started, it was a bunch of astronomers. That's what brought the dark sky thing to the table, astronomers. And the places that started were all around observatories. Now we see on every level just the extent of impacts of artificial light at night, and so more people have come to the table. But it's spread because of people seeing the impacts. It's spread because of people seeing the tourism. So it went from a program of just a handful over the years, and almost each year it's a doubling. So last year we saw 37 places certified, and we likely would have seen more, but there's just not the staff for it. We're 4 or 5 months behind in getting a certification, only because of the backlog from the people reviewing. So we would see more. So these places, there's several different places, and I wanted to just say sanctuaries, there's 15 in the world. There are 8 here in the US. The first sanctuary was 10 acres. It was a campground in a forest. We're talking 11.5 million. So 19 reserves, only 1 in the US, and there's good reason for that, because it takes multiple folks at the multiple jurisdictions to come to agreement, and that's why we've only seen 1. 34 communities, 19 alone in the western US, 116 parks, and that's because parks are easy. They have interpretive staff, they have a boundary, they have a mission, so state parks and all the national parks are, what we see the majority of. And then this new type of place called an urban night sky place, recognizing that not every place is dark, but it's an opportunity to create awareness. So I'm actually working on pursuing an urban night sky place right in Portland in Hoyt Arboretum. And the last, it's a designation that was from a while back, and there haven't been any for a long time, and then it closed in 2020 with the certification of Sun River as a development of distinction. And if you go around here, you'll see that, not every light is dark sky friendly. About 20%, I would say, are dark sky friendly, but it's striving to become dark sky friendly. It's working on it, and there's dark skies above. And so it's just that a dark sky community is the same thing, except it's incorporated, working towards that type of goal.
Gwendolyn can share a story about how dark it is when you show up at night. Yeah, we'll get that later.
So just a quick overview. Oh, and can you go back one? I wanted to point out, this is just the western U.S. And so for all you folks, if you've been hearing about Utah has, quote, the largest number of dark sky places. But if you can see underneath the words Utah, you'll just see little teeny green spots. They're just a lot of state parks and some smaller national parks. So you'll hear, and they have reached their tourism by saying, we have the largest concentration. But if you lump them all together, it's a small amount. Arizona actually is striving to kind of branch out and connect them. The biggest one that you see down there near Fresno, that's Death Valley National Park in California. We're looking at phase 1 being larger than Death Valley, which is the largest in the world. And when we're throughout the 3 counties, we will be over 3 times that size. So when Utah, now will be Oregon. Okay, to the elements here. So, for a lot of folks, it's simple. Define the boundary. Well, you're a national park, boundary, done. You're a state park, boundary, done. You're a nature park in Texas, boundary, done. So that's the easy part, but you still have to have a boundary. A lighting management plan, it's like, how are you going to work towards being dark sky friendly? And depending on what kind of place it is, like the places I described, you might need to just create this lightscape management plan, but if you're a community, you're gonna have to adopt an outdoor ordinance. So it ranges. A lighting inventory, again, it depends on what kind of place. If you're a sanctuary, you have to inventory all the lights. If you're a park, you have to inventory all the lights. If you're a community, you don't. You have to have a good ordinance, show a demo that you're moving towards it. If you're the other thing is a sky quality measurement. Again, not for every place. If you're an urban night sky place, you don't have to show that you're dark. You have to show that, you don't have glare in the way, so maybe you can have a place to educate people. But all your lights have to be compliant so you can be a demo site. If you're a sanctuary, like we're going for in the Outback, it is the darkest of dark. It is you have to have the least amount of light pollution in your sky. These letters of support, again, because it's not just a recognition program, it's a program that IDA wants to see sustained. So they want to see that there are people within the communities that truly support these efforts and are behind it. And then the final is, okay, now you have these lights. It's just like you have to start moving towards making them consistent with your zoning code or with your light management plan. So you need to come up with a retrofit plan. And that's pretty much the range of all the elements. It's not a simple thing. 195 is a lot. There would be more if it was simple. And I think that's it for me. I think I've got a question for you, Bob, but my thing timed out here. Okay, yeah, so, getting started, this is, by the way, when we look at the Outback, I just want to point out this, look at the Outback. We're here, this is all Northern Paiute territory and Shoshone territory, and I want to acknowledge that too, that this area has been stewarded by the tribes all this time. It has been stewarded by the ranchers. It has been stewarded, and that's why it remains dark, because of all the effort, because of the importance of this land and how it's been managed. And so getting started, Bob and I met a few years back when I got started, because as an advocate, this spot has been on the radar for a long time, being so dark, and I was making contacts. Bob and I touched base, and Bob was already starting in Lake County, and so I just want to say, what were you doing? How did you get this rolling? Because that's really where the momentum has come from.
Well, and see, we came to it from totally different places, and that's why, Dawn's like, what do you called me up when she's like, well, so what are you doing? I was like, well, we had a rural tourism studio in Lakeview in 2018. A lot of ideas came up, a lot of Western heritage, geological features, trails committees. That stuff came out of that, and that was great work. But also in the corner of the room was this idea of dark sky tourism, but it wasn't the right time. That wasn't what the group came out really fired up about, which was great. And they went on to do great work in those committees. And so by the time I had met Dawn, I had started to bring it back, because it was clearly an opportunity in Lake County anyway, because we had engagement from public land managers, and I can't overvalue that connection with your public land managers. And so, Jessica Batchelor, who might not be here, who was where Brianna is now at the Lake County Chamber, we had some meetings, and we had on March 13th, 2020, when everything shut down, Dawn and I were at the BLM headquarters in Lakeview. It was our last public meeting for a couple years. And but what came out of that was, this is a go, keep going. What we heard from that group of people was keep going. And so we kept going. And so in our going and going, and I'll pass it back to you, how did we go beyond Lake County?
Yeah, so, it's a large area with a very small population, so it's limited resources. We have an agency who certifies these things with limited resources. We have a community with limited resources. And so what I was hearing, I was looking for who's already on the ground doing this, to start to build something, and I met Bob, knew that Portland Audubon was speaking with BLM, looking at Steens, heard that Friends of Hawaii was interested in dark skies, and I just thought, I come from a natural resources management background, and I wrote a white paper. That's what you do. You write a white paper to try to, with the idea of, instead of all these places chasing after, a park here, a site here, a site here, making more work for IDA and using up those limited resources, we have an area that culturally, that geographically really shares a common identity. So what about creating one place with a common identity and bringing everybody together, using those resources collectively, and and instead of the communities like Burns and Lakeview and Ontario and Vail compete with one another for those tourism dollars, create this big community identity place where everybody benefits, where there is no competition, where everybody's going to benefit. All those places become community. And shared that white paper with Bob. He took it and talked to BLM. And then, we've moved through. We've had stakeholder workshops and talked with the pros and cons of if we did it this way versus this way. And overwhelmingly, people were on board and liked the bigger picture. And this is like the first map out of GIS, so we don't have the labels on the towns and everything yet, but this is the extent of the boundary. This represents over 11.5 million acres. It's huge. It's a lot of work. This represents, and I'll go into that, how many folks are involved, but what it represents is a broad community-based effort where everybody benefits, everybody shares the work. and it's less work on IDA. And they've never done anything like this. And it's been, a lot of the work has been just getting staff, because they have board members, they have the review committee that reviews this, who has no clue. Most of them are from east of the Mississippi or in Europe or in other places, and they have no concept of what the vastness and the remoteness of a place like this is. And so just getting their heads around this is a big deal. But staff themselves want to move in this direction where we look at dark sky sheds, on a broader basis.
Yeah, and that's what we, Don, and the close group, we refer to that as the big idea. Well, the big idea, let's start big. And just because it would just be better, right? Well, I think we all thought it would be better. But is that viable? And we were really pleasantly surprised after our first couple meetings that what we were hearing back from land managers and even from friends groups like Sammy's group and Malheur Refuge, bigger is better because it disperses visitation. It takes the pressure off any one place. And so going bigger actually was meeting a lot of their goals in public lands. And so once we heard that, we thought, okay, well, because the first time I ever met Elena, I burdened her with this project. I think she was on the job for like 2 weeks. And I said, hi, I'm Bob from Southern Oregon. I'm going to be talking to you about dark skies in the future. It's not right now, but I'm just letting you know it's coming. And I look forward to working with you. She's like, yeah, right. And then finally, I was like, Elena, it's time. And so how is this cross-regional work, been for you and benefited?
Yeah, well, thanks. And I was actually going to share that story because I'll never forget. I think it was like my first commission meeting and I met you. And then this following commission meeting, we sat down. I was like, okay. And I think that's what's been really exciting with this cross-regional opportunity is to kind of the foundational work that was being done in Lakeview and recognizing how it could be kind of replicated and really expanding to this broader area was really exciting. And Dawn touched on it as well. It's not duplicating resources. I think kind of really combining our efforts, that cross-regional opportunities really helps to elevate that. I think it's also really important to recognize that, doing this slow incremental process over the course of many, many years, Bob's been doing it, Dawn, they've been doing it much longer than we've been a part of the process, but it really has allowed for strengthening of partnerships, which I also think is a great kind of outcome of this process. And again, visitors don't know county lines, so it's to have this experience on a broader scale really helps to have cohesive messaging that all of our partners can use. So that experience, it resonates throughout all three counties. Let's see, the last thing really just amplifying that visitor experience with cohesive messaging. And as Bob mentioned, moving more broadly throughout the region to really lessening the impact on some of our more remote areas. So, the opportunities they're really endless, which is exciting. And and I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Sammy, for a question of how does such a large proposed sanctuary affect your work in Malheur County and the Owyhee?
Aha, good question. As a conservation organization, we actually focus a lot on recreation. Again, inspiring the hearts and minds, getting people on the landscape helps develop that relationship with the landscape. So we run this balance all of the time between promoting recreation, but also keeping the areas wild, right? We are a land conservation advocacy group. So with something like this that's so vast, as Dawn mentioned, this allows the opportunity for some strategic dispersal. We don't have all of everybody going to one place all of the time, but we can start to focus on some specific areas to give people a variety to go to, as well as some dispersal away from just the one main recreation area. So that's kind of how we see it overall, the benefits of this view of looking at a dark sky shed, a much larger area than to amplify just in one specific spot. Again, I think the balance between recreation in one area and a more dispersed area, it's a delicate balance because you don't want to shove everybody out into deep, wild, dark places. And we oftentimes hear in the Owyhee, especially from Malheur County Search and Rescue, this is a wild, open area with poorly labeled roads, rough roads. You don't want people going out into the middle of nowhere in the dark. So our perspective from Friends of the Owyhee is as long as we can strategically place some infrastructure, signage, pamphlets, education on where to go that's safe, that kind of plays the same role that we're already trying to do from a land recreation perspective. Yeah.
We were going to do questions at the end, but I think it's, I mean, I like it.
You mentioned the word shed a couple of times. Can you be more specific? Because maybe not all of us, me, don't understand, what is a shed specifically and how does that get designated and measured as a shed for
Well,
dark?
think of a tool shed, right? It's a place to, oops. If you think of a tool shed, right, it's a place to put things. So you think of a watershed, right? It's where all the water is. And so that's how we're using the word shed. It's not even something that's been, I think I coined it because it's I work in watershed management and it's a dark sky shed versus a watershed. So we're just looking at it at a real broad landscape level.
And so we looked at the opportunity, we looked at some of the, the strategy of how we were proceeding with this, and there have been challenges, right? So let's be real, right? It's not easy, and so we'll just talk a little bit about some of the challenges because when you start to do this work, you're going to have them too. But I thought, Dawn, you've been a seasoned project manager, lots of big projects, and what challenges have been unique in this project that you've seen, that you've encountered?
Well, I thought relicensing the Klamath project and years of study and responding to all those studies was a big regional area, or the water supply for the Coos Bay North Bend area was a big project, or a 300-mile transmission line through Eastern Oregon was a big regional project. This by far is the largest in terms of scale project that I've managed, and so just with that comes its uniqueness. But if we look at just looking at nominations for dark sky places and what the challenges are and what's more unique about this project. And by the way, that little picture of the Simpsons, that's my goal for everything, that anybody can anywhere go outside, sit in front of their house and look up at the stars. So that's a goal. The big one is engaging volunteers, because this is mostly volunteer-based, and volunteers, if you've ever worked with volunteers, it's herding cats because it's not their day job, right? And so just getting everybody together, all the different players together, a vast area has its unique challenges. The thing that's the most challenging about this that's not been encountered by any nomination to date, other than those reserves to some degree, the reserves that are only one in the U.S., and that's Central Idaho, Dark Sky Reserve, there near Sun Valley and Ketchum, that area, is that most of them are one single site, right? Owned by one single entity with already the boundaries defined. There's one land manager to deal with. They usually have, right? So if it's a community, it's just there's the city council, right? Or it's the county commissioners. And there's never been a county one. They're always at the city level, municipal level. Well, in the sanctuary, we have 3 counties. We have 4 federal agencies. We just added one. I haven't told you that yet. As soon as the mapping comes out, we found another. It's a big area. Sam, you have the boundary that added the Bureau of Reclamation. So, but even within the 4 agencies, one of them is BLM. There's 3 districts, and even within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, there's 2 refuges. So you have different managers. And then we have 4 state agencies, but because they're broken down by divisions, we have different division leads. So even if we have ODOT, because they have maintenance yards and rest stops, we have multiple. So we have multiple people. So really, in the end, we're looking at 20 signatories. The other thing is when these processes go through, it's one lightscape management plan, right? So it's just one national park, one state park, Prineville, Little Park, just had, single light management plan, 2 people say, okay, and you're done. There's no need for any memorandum of understanding, but because we have multiple people coming to the table and IDA is used to having one lightscape management plan or its community, one ordinance, I had to promise that we're going to bring you one lightscape management plan. Well, that's negotiating it with all those entities. And all those entities being state agencies and federal agencies, they're used to working. I've prepared lots of memorandum, working on those big projects. I've worked with lots of federal agencies and I've written memorandum of understanding. But they're signing on to something. And it's kind of a memorandum of understanding doesn't have the same legal weight of a contract or something of that. But it's a major gentleman's agreement with all the roles and responsibilities. So just having everybody satisfied, but everybody also includes IDA. So anything like this is really super unique, and these are the challenges, but a lot of these challenges that we faced won't be the average challenges for if folks here want to represent a dark sky community. It'll be much simpler, but it's always easier to have a case study of like, what's the most that can happen, because it gives you insight on the smaller things.
That's great. Thank you, Dawn. And you can see the enormity of this, but what we hear is keep going. And so we keep going, and we're not done yet. What kind of challenges are coming up, Elena or Sammy, that are, challenges that are unique in your worlds?
Yeah, I think for us as kind of the regional destination management organization, really working with our local partners and understanding where they're at in the process. Working with Sammy and other partners in Harney County, the interest is there, but how can we best support them or meet them where they're at to ensure that we're communicating effectively, we're helping support the work that they're already doing. I think for us too, kind of in coming in the process, kind of during more of the COVID time, also created unique challenges because we weren't able to do a lot of things face to face, which with a project like this, I think really having those in-person opportunities help for that more, personal relationship building, as well as, more broader Q&A. You can host a meeting at the public library or, different things like that. So doing it virtually and really trying to pin people down and be like, how can we help you? Or, what do you need from us? Was a unique challenge. But again, I think also kind of looking at that as a learning opportunity of how can we, again, meet people where they're at, understand the communication challenges or different things like that to really work towards this common goal that we all have. So. Sammy, anything you want to share?
Yeah, no shortage of challenges, I think, right? With any worthy cause, there's oftentimes a lot of hurdles that are put in the way, but what are hurdles for but for jumping, right? So I think from our organization's point of view, one of the challenges is just capacity, right? This is a huge area. There's a relatively small team, even though there's a lot of buy-in, the 20 signatories. Really, this is a pretty small team of actual people doing it. And you know how that goes when you have a small team and you have a big project. So our specific challenge, the lighting inventory that Dawn was going to mention there, it's a time eater. I mean, you look at Highway 95, just driving the highway between one light area to do an inventory and the other is a good hour and a half. So time on the landscape to do the inventory, is a challenge, and then getting volunteers to use sky quality meters or to do any of the volunteer things. Maybe they do it, but then they don't give you the numbers or they don't report it. Or maybe they intended to do it, but they, things come up for volunteers and they can't. I was going to also use this just for a second to talk about outreach. It looks like we might not necessarily talk much more about that, but that is our organization, again, the hearts and minds portion of winning over the community that this is important. And that happens on the ground level at the library, at the museums, is going out and talking to people. So it's one thing if we have, the mayor of a city, or it's one thing if we have the land manager and we're all in on it. But, in Oregon, and I imagine in all rural communities and all areas, that we like to be down here at the ground level and all agree that this is an important thing. So in our outreach plan, we've gone to the libraries. Most of this is virtual. Like, we have a webinar series. Every month we do a stargazing webinar. There's one tonight. And then visiting libraries physically that could allow that. And then also engaging the college classroom beyond. So I teach astronomy at Treasure Valley Community College, but beyond what we would do in the classroom, and engaging them with the idea of a dark sky sanctuary and talking to their friends. But I'm one person that has a dozen other programs, and this is like a fun piece. This is a heart and mind piece. We don't have grants for it. We don't have a lot of other things to cover the time and capacity going into it. So I'd say that's been the largest challenge. As a lot of things, it comes to finances and time and capacity, but we're easily able to solve that as we've found success in the last year working with this team and getting the network going in our county. I think every day we're adding on partners, every day we're adding on interest. The Malheur Enterprise, our local news media, just dropped a story a week ago on this, which was really inspiring to see that come from our side of the project in that small community. So no shortage of challenges, but there's some.
Well, that's a good segue to one of the things that I have found most challenging, and surprisingly, it is on the outreach front, and challenging. I've never been more nervous really in the work that I've done than having lunch at the Heart Mountain store in Plush and inviting who knows who's going to come to a little dog and pony about this idea that we're talking about nominating a sanctuary, and 6 ranching families show up. The Adel Elementary School shows up. The Plush Middle School shows up. Wildlife managers, plus the cook and everybody back in the store. And it's like, okay, you're on. I was nervous, just because you're in. This is not my world. This is their world, and just trying to approach it with that sense of I'm in your place. I want to talk about an idea that I think is great. I think it'd be great for you guys, but what do you think? And trying to approach it the right way, and believe me, the feedback was just honest and direct, and I'm concerned about this and this and this. And that's all been great, actually. One thing I love the people out there. They just tell you, what's a problem, and these are legit concerns. People are concerned about their livelihood. They want to know, is their grazing lease going to be threatened? BLM managers want to know, do I need to be looking over my shoulder up to see if I'm breaking any rules by signing an MOU in this way? And so we have had some great facilitation from the governor's office as well, with just even how do you get all the Oregon state agencies to sign on to the MOU, each of them without needing to, as they would tell us, run it up the flagpole, right? So Dawn and I were like, well, let's just go to the top of the flagpole and let's start there and see if we can't get some kind of buy-in from the top. And that worked. And so these are the kinds of things that we're learning, but they're coming out of the challenges that are with it. I know we're getting close. I want to just go into one piece that I know you've been working on, Dawn, with Travel Oregon, about how the work that we're doing, and just wish us luck because we're not done, and we'll know in the fall whether this happens or not. But in the meantime, Dawn has been able to work with Travel Oregon on creating a sort of a toolkit for your communities, because I'm telling you, it's going to come to communities near you. And what is that going to mean for you when there's a dark sky park in your region? And so I'll just let you talk about that.
Yeah, there have been lessons learned, and there have been lessons learned from 195 dark sky places. But looking at dark sky tourism is not just certifying dark sky places. Look at Sun River before it was a dark sky place. It's dark sky tourism. Look at the wineries out there in Chehalem and places like that. It's dark sky tourism. And so Travel Oregon approached me about, putting together a toolkit so people could, make sense of everything understand what we're talking, make it educational, make it inspirational, why people would want to protect dark skies, what, some background on what it's about, but then really actionable items, tools that you can use for engagement and, looking at the, what equipment you need for astrotourism and so forth. And so right now, we just got started on it. This in the end will be about, under a 20-page document. It'll be a PDF that'll be on Travel Oregon's website that people can put on their websites. That could be printed out, anybody can print out. And it's not just those pages and that's everything. Think of the Magic School Bus. There are links and links and links will be buried in that with examples and there's case studies. And so everything will be, so you'll have this full suite in these few pages with the full breadth by following all the links that will be there and all the resources. And so we've just broken it down right now in terms of what types of elements will be in there. It is this background on our Oregon's magnificent skies and how we light, how we do dark sky friendly lighting, what that looks like, lighting for the night, what the specific opportunities, and it's not just stargazing, the opportunities, include moonwalks, just getting people, owl walks, bat walks, it's, night bathing. There's lots of things that folks are doing beyond just the stars. Also looking at these recognition programs and beyond just the certification of a place, there's a recognition program that has you have at your home. You can get a little certificate from IDA, for your home that you've audited your home and you've become dark sky friendly, or your business has become dark sky friendly. The more businesses in a community that have gone through and adjusted their lights could put these signs, these little awards in the window, and people walk around and it catches on, oh, this is what, this is a dark sky friendly business, or this is a dark sky friendly place. People put that in their ads, lots of opportunities. And then just the engagement, all the ways that we've talked about how you partner. Because in everything these days, we know resources, it's partnership, partnership, partnership is the way to go. Case studies tell the story, so we'll have case studies of how different folks have put together really good tourism type projects, and then just a whole list of other helpful tools and places to go. And so I think you shared, and in the essence of time, Bob, kind of your lessons learned as we were going through lessons learned, unless you had something to add before Q&A.
Yeah, I do. So we can move into some Q&A. I think we have time, but I think the thing that I've learned, and I think I knew it, but what's really been important in this project is that while, Astrax wants to speak for the stars, and that's awesome, I think we're here to speak for the people that live here. And so this is, we're trying to present to the IDA something that is already branded. We are asserting a fact, and we're hoping they're going to agree, okay? And so we've gone so far as to sort of, this is what the nomination materials are going to look like. Like we're ready, we're done. And I think if you look at other dark sky stuff, you're not going to see a barn in it, And I think that is a barn actually. But I think part of that is just to show this is a lived-in landscape, and that's been the most important thing I think for all of us to keep in mind, that this is a lived-in landscape. And even with all of that activity, the people who lived there before, now and in the future, it is still the darkest place in the country. And so let's celebrate that night sky heritage that is right now. Like if we didn't do anything, if we froze time right now, we'd still be that, okay? And that the people who live there have kept it that way. And we need to recognize that, because I didn't get out of the plush Heart Mountain store without actually wanting to give them a commitment that we heard that they matter in this project, and they don't want it to come just from outside and be designated. And they're right. And so that's the learning that I think matters the most. And I hope you get that in your communities and are able to work with that. And so I think we are done. I don't know what our timing is, Hillary. I'll let you moderate it. 2 minutes? So we have...
And you could repeat the question.
Sure. Okay, 1, 2...
Well, I was just going to ask, I would love to kind of gauge your progress on this project, and if you guys have formulated the lightscape management plan yet, and what that looks like, if you've taken part in the inventory yet? Because you mentioned that was a huge challenge. I just wanted to kind of.
Yeah, the question's really how to engage with, where we are and track the progress on the project. And I'll let Dawn answer that. I think Facebook's the answer.
Well, I think your question was the status.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so our status is, we're on our third draft of the Lightscape Management Plan and MOU. We're waiting for final comments from IDA staff too. So we're really close. We're really close. We have a meeting Friday, and we're hoping to kind of wrap it so that it can start to go out for signature. So we're really close. The lighting inventory, you think you found it all. I used remote sensing to figure out even where to focus, and then there's this pops up or this pops up, and so we're close. But what we have in our Lightscape Management Plan that is different from others is we've specifically asked permission from IDA that we don't have private folks have to be commensurate, consistent with the lighting management plan, that it be purely voluntary, but that all public agencies, and entities, at least anything publicly owned, any facility, those things be consistent. And so there's precedence for that in New Zealand. It's different, and it's because, we're not a national park. Sadly, look at the beauty we have through Oregon, but we have one national park. We could qualify for a gazillion, but we have one. So we're close, and we're actually close enough that we're looking at spring to get a nomination in for the first phase of it in Lake. And it is a phased approach, and that was in the white paper too, to phase it out. And we're looking for, by the time it comes back from IDA, a certification by the end of the year. So we're really moving.
And when I said Facebook, there is an ODSN Facebook page where progress is, if there are milestones, if there's requests for photos, volunteers, that kind of thing. Dawn's really good on pushing it out on that Facebook. So okay, can we do one more? Well, he raised his hand. Okay, one more.
Be a quick answer.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, Dawn, the dark sky friendly lighting. And the other night, trying to find my way back after being at the Owl's Nest, I noticed as I passed under some of the parking lights, they would get a little brighter, like motion sensor or something. Is that some of that lighting that you mentioned?
I haven't noticed that, but there's really three.
Maybe it was the Owl's Nest.
But I'd tell you,
They were just getting a little brighter.
dimming is one of the legs. There's just really three basic legs, and I'll just go over. So if you think of a stool for dark sky friendly, in the beginning it was shielding, and now it's fully shielded. So if you see a bulb, so if you walk around and you see lights here and you're seeing a bulb, that's not fully shielded. It might be shielded from the top, but if you're still seeing the bulb, that's not fully shielded. The other is how much light, the intensity of the light. Is it like more than you need? Is it causing glare? There's the glare probably getting closer to it, that you were picking up those LED lights than the glare. And the other is trying to limit the blue rich white light. So you'll see that there's some lights around that are amber, but a lot of the lights that are here, they wouldn't pass that third leg. And it's that blue rich white light that is really causing the light pollution to be as it is, and scattering and all the effects to wildlife and so forth. But it's moving, because there are some fully shielded, there are some things, and if any, I'll be out back if people have questions and can just point out right out this building, what's a good light, what's a bad light.
That's great. Thank you so much, Elena, Sammy, Dawn. Thank you for being with us. And if anyone, has ideas you want to talk about, I just want to recognize again Bill and Kathy from the Oregon chapter of the IDA. They're here in Bend. If you have any questions that land in them, connect with them. And thank you for coming and learning more about us.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I run the observatory in Bend that's connected to Worthy Brewing, and we have about 15,000 people a year that come through the observatory, and it's a really unique opportunity to reach a lot of people, because if you're not that into astronomy, to go out to the Oregon Observatory or Pine Mountain and you're having a beer, you're going to stumble up to see through the telescope. And so it's been a really good opportunity to reach people where they're at and talk to people that may be visiting from bigger cities that aren't really familiar with dark skies. And we do have a lot of effects of light pollution with our telescope in Bend, but it's a good way to showcase how objects look here versus dark sky locations, and I think using telescopes and that kind of intellectual connection between us and the sky can be a really good resource. So if anyone wants to chat about that kind of stuff, I'm around.
More Oregon innovation.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it, because I had every intention to, when I was talking about the observatories and what's happening is to include the observatory, and it just kind of,
No, you're
but
good.
I'm glad you filled in my blank space.
Thank you all for coming.
Do you guys want to take a quick photo?